Good evening, and welcome to the Hero's Breath podcast. I'm your always lovely host, Matthew Huddle.
Joined by Tom Jasinski.
The recording date is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. This is episode 14. Tonight we will be talking about Magic Flight. First, we'll get the housekeeping out of the way and say thank you to our beautiful sponsors, the Phi Center. The website is PHICENTER.NYC. A holistic integrative practice. They have acupuncture, physical therapy, occupational therapy as well. Of course, neurofeedback. The Mind program is a wonderful proprietary neurofeedback system. It's helped me progress through different barriers, think of things differently. Now I'm just crashing through these walls, swiping at dragons left and right in every cave with just reckless abandon.
I wouldn't call it reckless either. You've been pretty
aggressive.
Yeah.
Aggressive abandon.
You've been very calculated.
Oddly calculated. Like I don't. Yeah. It's not premeditated calculation. It's like I stumble into something and go, oh, this is the next thing I have to go through, and it's just taken that part of my brain and just cranked it up to 60.
You just recently engaged in that new app.
Oh yeah, TikTok's a boatload of fun.
You immediately almost just intuitively grasped that.
I'm having a blast, and you know what? I'm not overthinking that.
The only reason you guys can hear our lovely voices is because a wonderful wonderful editor, James Morano, JamesMorano.com. He does videography. He produces music videos.
Drone pilot.
Yeah, go to his website and check out some of what he's done.
Clean, man.
Super
very
clean,
beautiful.
and just the layout, everything is just so spot on.
Yeah, he also puts us on the RSS feed, so he is a full-service editor. So, Magic Flight is not entirely integral to every story. It can be in response to a direct threat from environmental factors, an enemy, or a combination of the two. Jack the Giant Slayer, after he got the harp or the goose or whatever version of the story you read, the giant comes after him. But it can also be environmental. In Star Wars, after Luke fires the torpedoes into the exhaust vent, and they had to all, get the hell out of there. Then, in the Halo games, though, it was different. It was more of a combination. You had the Flood, and you had the Covenant attacking you, and you had to deal with them, but you also had to get the hell out because the whole place you were on was about to blow.
We started talking about this. I had a lot of difficulty for myself trying to piece together how this would play out in real life. Because like you said, this is an optional stage.
If you're in a semi-stable part of the world, you're not going to have to run away from an enemy after you had a great success in your life. Oh, I landed that sail. Now my boss is going to cut my head off. I have to run. It's not literally like that. This stage is about the timing. There's many times that the hero has to run, or the hero has to fight or flight, but it's after the ultimate boon. After you have that achievement, this is what comes immediately after that, again, optionally. It's not what's outside in our lives. It's what's inside that's going to do us the most harm.
This is in all these situations, right? Danger still follows. We've achieved the goal. What are the internal factors, the dangers?
What are we about to fuck up for ourselves?
Exactly. That we need to now step away from and remove ourselves from. That's danger.
This is one of the stages I was involved with most recently. And I would honestly say that I really came through it. And what I realized most by being so viscerally involved in it so recently in my journey is that this manifests in our lives typically in the inverse of how it's presented in the story. In the stories, it's, you have to run, you have to move. But in our lives, so often, especially if we had in the previous stage ended up in the refusal to return, we feel like we wasted time, and now we got a book. And that's going to fuck us up worse. It's the same as if you're playing Halo, and you've got to run, the timer's going off, the ring's going to explode, the Covenant's everywhere, the Flood's coming, and you're just running around shooting wildly. You will never finish the game. You have to have a route. You have to have a plan. You have to only fire at the enemies who are directly in front of you. You have to go at it calculated. You have to calm the fuck down. And that's something I had to realize recently. There's so much maybe inside you, maybe outside of you, trying to push you to move faster than you need to. And a couple of inspirational guys that I found were really helping me, listening to their advice over again, was Tai Lopez and Gary Vee. I quote and talk about them a lot. They're massively successful entrepreneurs. One of the things Tai Lopez likes to quote, he quotes people a lot, obviously he reads a lot, and one of his personal mentors, Joel Salatin, he was the guy who made organic food a household term. He says, a fence that goes up fast falls down fast. And one of the things Gary Vee talks a lot about, I'm going to quote one of his blogs, he says, you must believe that life is long. There are just way too many of you acting like it ends tomorrow, and that if I don't get there right this second, then you never will. That if you don't get that promotion, raise, introduction, car, watch, or vacation, then you never will. Trust me, it's not true. You have to understand that you have so much time. Whether you are 14 or 44, patience is the answer.
It's so rare in business and in life in general that there's like a turning moment.
You only see that in like Hallmark movies.
It doesn't do justice to the fact that it really is this progression. That's what's missed.
Nuance.
People will wake up one day and notice, wow, I'm here. People will ask, where was that shift? Where was that overnight change? It's a culmination of everything that went into that.
Yeah, there are those shifting moments.
Absolutely,
You know?
but those shifting moments are only there because of the work that
everything that's gone into
right.
it.
We really tend to miss out on that because we are so driven to want to see such immediate results.
Well, we have what Tai Lopez talks about, FOMO, fear of missing out. That's something that, you know, a lot of influencers on social media feeding into. You get these people, they post their Instagram pictures, they're on private jets with stacks of bills and gorgeous women and great locations, and a lot of that stuff is fake. One of the things Gary talks about is that the fact is people look at that stuff and they think, oh, that's the life I should be leading as an entrepreneur. And he says that's not the case. He's talked about friends who have committed suicide that he's lost personally because they wanted to live that life. He says, look, if you love like making t-shirts and your bills are paid, you're not living a glamorous life, but you got a car you can rely on and you got enough clients to pay your bills and everything else, you're free. You're not listening to anyone else tell you what to do. You're doing the entrepreneur thing. People have to have that certain perspective. That's right. Otherwise, you're not really internalizing what the journey itself is all about. You're not having a love of the journey itself, and that's what the rest of this entire podcast is all about. And that's what this stage is really all about in our lives. Again, the way it manifests inversely from the way it's written in story. And I don't honestly know why. Maybe because it's so rare these days, or maybe it's always been like that we've written these stories to reflect the opposite of what we typically have to do. One of the things Gary Vee likes to talk about is eat shit for 10 years, eat caviar for the rest of your life. He says you've got to deploy patience, you've got to love the process. I'm addicted to the process of the battle scars, the setbacks, the lack of. Wouldn't you rather guarantee millionaireship by 36 by doing long-term marathon running versus doing a bunch of bullshit sprints that guarantees never having it? And I promise you, a funny thing happens to your self-esteem when you're 31 and not a millionaire because you've been chasing fast fucking cash and now you're 6 years removed from not hitting your goal. Your self-esteem starts fucking with your head. He talks about three things, is patience, authenticity, and gratitude. And those three things start to overlap when you're on this journey, and they almost become indistinguishable from each other. So when he talks about authenticity, it's like, he says, people think, oh, I gotta like curse more and be like, Gary Vee. It's like, but if that's not you, it's going to sound like shit. Don't do it. Me, I've had a mouth like a sailor since I was a teenager, and I thought I had to like start censoring myself. And years ago, I met Gary, not met, but I encountered Gary Vee online. I go, oh fuck it, there goes that. I don't have to censor shit because that's exactly who I am.
And that's so much more easily conveyed because people seek something they want to trust and invest. We have really good bullshit detectors, period.
Yeah,
it's true.
Humans do.
There's a lot of overlap between what you just said, authenticity, fumbling words, but the patience and the gratitude. Tim Ferriss just recently had someone wonderful on this podcast. The discussion was really around, we're all born with certain gifts. There's certain things that we can actually become very good at if we do try, but then there's certain things, and this term he used, that we're just encoded for. And it's a matter of us finding our passion, finding what really drives us, but also really tapping into what it is that we're just so uniquely gifted with. Because, you can be great at math, and then you go to college, you go to university, and then you see these people who are just encoded with mathematics. It's to a level that you see that there's this gap that will not be bridged. No matter how many thousands of hours that you might be putting in, you can't achieve that same level of success.
And you won't get into that flow state that takes you to a superhuman level. Red Bull, by the way, I recommend anyone follow if you're on TikTok. You see these athletes, guys skiing on like parasails down like this snowy ravine, and I just commented, I'm like, do these people know video games even fucking exist? But you have to stay in that flow state. You can't have conscious thought this whole time you're doing it. You can't think at all.
Alex Honnold?
Oh, the guy who scaled Devil's Peak.
Yes.
Or El Capitan.
With no harness, right?
Yeah.
It was all,
first time.
It was all free flowing. And he knew that it's all action. Like if he starts thinking,
he's dead.
He's fucked. This is where we need to start.
We need to know there's a spot in life that we can get to, that flow state. I mean, there's work getting there, but there's less resistance getting there. Yeah. We'll kind of flow into that spot.
It's on us, for example, to really do the work, to really figure out what that means for us. Noticing what are we passionate about, because that right there will easily indicate where you might actually find your flow state. Also really trying to tap into what it is that we're so uniquely gifted with and really pursuing that. Then this is where the work needs to then get put in, and the patience, the gratitude for the experiences had, the wisdom gained. We're born with some of these things. It's not our doing, but we don't take credit for that. Associated with that is just this level of humbleness and humility. You then take those skills and those gifts. You really work on capitalizing on that.
And it requires a certain amount of adaptability, too. My daughter, she's about to turn 7. For years, we saw that spark in her to make people happy, to be the center of attention, to never shy up. And so for her to get on stage and already be in theater, since she was like 3, that's just her natural state, and we know that. We're not pushing her into it, we just let her go into that, and that's what she'll naturally glom to. Most people aren't going to be fantastic actors. I already tell us, like, look, you may not end up being an actress, but you could take those same skills and become a salesperson or a manager or something. You could apply those skills elsewhere. So having that, openness, that adaptability, that's the same as having to make haste, knowing how to change your path really, really fast. As something blows up around you, you're ducking and dodging. It's knowing how to roll with things. When I was younger, and when I was really young, you're a kid. You don't have that bullshit stopping you. As you get older, you have more and more other people's bullshit.
I forgot where I heard this quote, but small steps performed repeatedly will take you up the tallest mountain.
Henry Ford said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to see the next step.
Isolate those things that we just talked about, and then start really enhancing and improving upon and really deepening those skills over time. You notice this subtle progression. People see the end goal, right? But they miss. If we look at those people that have achieved success, we're not looking at all the work put in from the moment's inception.
Steve Jobs' story is one of my favorites, especially the way he almost lost back in the 90s. He basically got kicked out of Apple and started a whole new company just to go back into Apple. It was a fucking brilliant move, and just the whole up and down through all of that, and his single-minded focus on it. If you see the movie with Michael Fassbender, they did a brilliant job with that. Let me try to bring this into the real world with realizing this. So going back a few months, there's a section in Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life and Antidote to Chaos where he's talking about how there's a very basic part of our brain that assesses our place in the social hierarchy. It's old. It's found in lobsters, who first evolved over 350 million years ago. With evolution, you have parts of the brain, or limbs or whatever, it's always taken off of something else that was successful and just adapted over time. So this part of our brain, if it perceives us to be in a low place in the dominance hierarchy, then our bodies produce low amounts of serotonin and high amounts of cortisol, which are neurotransmitters. And that causes us to react poorly to even minor stressors. Because when we're living at the bottom of the social hierarchy, resources are scarce, pleasures are rare, and mating options are few. So every little inconvenience could be a potential catastrophe. So we have to react like that. So you notice people who are very, poor, who are always, don't have a car, they're taking the bus, they're the most negative, nasty people on earth sometimes, and they're always like, oh, everything's going to go wrong, and they fulfill this, self-fulfilling prophecy, and they never get promoted because they're always an asshole.
It's self-perpetuating, and it's
right.
tragic.
It really is, and I've worked with some of these people. I've been there, and then that was part of the thing, is that recently I noticed I was having negative reactions very quickly. Going back to, I would say, December, maybe. Humans, we're more complicated. We need more than just a system to help us react quicker in the environment. We have to have fulfillment and a rich experience in living. Otherwise, what good are we? We're apes with smartphones then. Learning that this part of our brain will do this to us, it wants to basically just assess how much money we have in the bank, how many sexual conquests we've had, compare that to everybody else's, and then call it a day. But we need more in our lives to really enjoy living and really get on. Now, the Buddha taught us that attachment leads to suffering, and another word for attachment, of course, is expectation. And David Meltzer, another entrepreneur, I highly recommend y'all follow him. Always putting out really positive stuff, really sweet guy. He says, detach your happiness from the outcome and enjoy the positive, consistent, and persistent pursuit of your potential. The hero's journey is about the development, and it's lengthy. It's a complicated process, and it's going to manifest in different avenues of living. It's going to manifest personally, professionally, romantically, sexually, financially, every Lee you can imagine. Just because you're doing great in certain areas of your life doesn't mean you're going to be doing great in others. And the inverse, of course, applies. It doesn't mean your life's a catastrophe just because some things aren't working out. Or even if a lot of things aren't working out, but you got some really cool stuff. You focus on the good stuff.
To build on what Buddha said, obviously, we're conflating this goal and happiness. That's where tragedy. God forbid, you don't achieve that goal. Does that mean you can't be happy? Absolutely not.
Right.
Happiness shouldn't be dependent upon any one thing.
Not the external stuff.
Life isn't even about happiness. It's about purpose. If we get too attached to this idea that we need to be pursuing happiness, we're not feeling happy, and we imagine that shouldn't we be?
Ignore the shoulds if you want to actually enjoy your real life.
Because, society tells us that we need to be happy, and if we're not feeling it, then, well, there's clearly something wrong with us. Absolutely not. Life inherently holds both the good and the bad. It's about being satisfied. Not satisfied in more, animal sense, but just satisfaction in that when you're pursuing wholeheartedly that goal, that purpose, and embracing that path and pursuing that goal and that purpose, whatever comes along that path, even if you were not to have achieved what it is you sought out to achieve, but really putting all of your effort into every single moment of every single day in pursuit of that, you can die happy knowing that that time was not wasted. That
you're immersed in the whole thing, and that's what we're going to keep coming back to. Life is a very beautiful, complicated dance, complicated journey, and yes, complicated. People try to simplify life. I'm like, fucking don't. Sometimes you can in certain contexts, I guess. Like, what is this, romantic doublespeak? Kind of, yeah. Looking at life itself, looking at the act of living from as far back as you can, it's this beautiful scene, and there's these interconnected moments and webs, but when you're in it, then it gets simple. When you're living in that moment, just be here in that moment, be here in your body, be with the loved one, be with their moment, get into that flow state. That's those moments where you're living your most authentic self. That's when you're really expressing gratitude. That's when you're the most attractive. That's when you're feeling life in all its boundless pleasures. And this is this is when I get into my flow state. This is when Thomas sits there and kind of goes, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's when I go off. But see, I had the moment. I thought of the game, so I lost the game.
There you go.
I love that thing because it's actually the best illustration for getting through life in the most seamless ways. Don't think of the game, otherwise you lose the game.
The moment you think you got it,
you don't have it.
You lost
it's like quantum mechanics. If you understand it, you fucked up.
Oh man, I wish I remembered who said that quote.
Heisenberg.
Maybe.
Well, Heisenberg uncertainty principle was named after him.
If you think you know quantum physics, you don't.
If you think you've got the handle on this whole living thing, you don't. You can't think about it. And my problem was back in December. I guess I was just doing a lot of thinking about it. I was looking at where I wanted to go and where I wanted to be. I had a lot of feelings of personal inadequacy, and these were unconscious. Again, this is what the mind program is really good at doing: is bringing up those unconscious and subconscious thoughts and moods and feelings and the abstract thinking and bringing it more to the surface. My unconscious mind was trying to measure my station in life by standards that don't apply to who I am as a person. I'm not the kind of person who's going to sleep with random women, nor am I so insecure that I have to be in a relationship all the time. But my lobster brain wanted to start, using those metrics on me. Honestly, I've been going through a dry spell that make the Atacama Desert look like a swamp. So those neurons had been really screaming. And once I really sat down, and this is the part that we're talking about. Oh, is there a significant moment of breakthrough? There really kind of was, but it took a while. It took a few days of me going out into the woods, going out to the shore, meditating, doing the shit Tom said because he's right, and I actually really looked at that gap, that gulf between my unconscious desires and the reality that I could make tangibly manifest right now. And the agitation went away. And it was a good thing too, because about a month later there was a slump in my business, and in both businesses really. That all would have conspired together to push me down into the downward spiral, and then we'll see if the mind program really cured my depression or not. Fortunately, that didn't happen because I got ahead of the one problem before things started compiling onto each other. Before more environmental factors would have stressed me out. I can't control the environmental factors. Right. I can't control when my clients reschedule and cancel and go to fucking Africa. Literally, I can't necessarily always control who I'm going to meet, if I'm going to have any sexual conquest worth writing home about.
But that's the thing, right? Like what you did was I
controlled my reaction.
That's precisely the thing, and you made the choice. Because so often, almost every single one of us will do this. We get so caught up with the problem that we place unnecessary energy and attention to the problem versus placing our focus on the things that are within our grasp, within our control.
Right.
Where can we change
We overthink about things, and those are the guys who go out to the club and they just reek of desperation. And it is the cheapest cologne no woman wants to be around. So, I was a bit of a wreck for a little while. You saw me. I was vibrating because I had a couple weeks where just nothing was happening. I didn't have anything to write. I didn't have anything to edit. My clients were inconsistent, so I wasn't working a lot. And I wasn't so much like I would normally be if I was frustrated. I wasn't like a caged animal. I was more like a bored sled dog. I was more of a danger of chewing off my own leg than I was really being and I wasn't aggressive because I was dealing with the things that would normally make me aggressive. And it was really huge breakthrough for me. And I have to say, this stage is definitely behind me now. I'll probably go through it again in my life, but right now, it's behind me.
More than once, sure.
More than once. What I managed to do is one thing that smart, ambitious, impatient people like myself are really shit at doing, which is nothing.
So you were already in a certain place in your business where things were in place. You had reached a certain boon. There was a certain goal that had been attained. And now, where was the danger that was coming in? It would be overaction. Perhaps because you have this aggressive streak, right? Like, you could have been sabotaging yourself by maybe pushing too hard, too fast.
Writing shit material just because I wanted to write it.
Exactly. And so for you, this magic flight would have been basically running away from that danger, which in that case was action. So in your case, the solution was presence, calm,
plan the route before you run it.
In most cases, action beats anxiety and motion beats meditation, but sometimes the reverse is also true. And in this case, you really needed to slow down in order for the next step to really kind of present itself.
In the last stage, and talking about my refusal to return, it was easier for me, it was natural for me to want to just fight half the country than it was to say, okay, let me figure out where I could bridge the gaps. Where can I find the middle ground? That's always been my problem. And this reminds me of in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Between the first and second season, Aang goes to the city of Omashu, which is an earthbending city, and his friend King Bumi was there. In the first season, they have this great reintroduction. The second season, he goes to learn earthbending from King Bumi, and the whole city's overrun by the Fire Nation, and Bumi was captured. And they attempt this daring rescue, and they break Bumi out, and as they're moving away, in flight, Bumi tells Aang to stop, that he wanted to be captured. And he explained to Aang, there are choices you make in combat, and they're called Jing. It's the way you direct your energy. And he said there's positive Jing in attacking, negative Jing in retreating, and neutral Jing. There's obviously more Jings than that, but these are like the three big ones, the three main categories. Neutral Jing is when a person does nothing, but it's not really nothing. It's taking the time to listen and wait for the right moment to strike. So when Gary Vee says you have to love the process, to get to this phase of the journey, you have to let go of what expectations you're holding and develop your life in each degree at the right pace. And just as we talked about in Atonement with the Father, how humility is a counterforce to grandiosity, loving the process is the only effective counter to impatience. Loving the process, having gratitude to be in the process, is the only way to get through this stage. Because again, it's counterintuitive, especially if you're an aggressive person like me, especially if you're impatient, just people in general. Once they figure out, if you're in the stage of your life, or if you're anywhere past the ultimate boon, you're like, all right, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna do the thing, I'm gonna be successful, and holy shit, maybe I have to slow down a little bit. That's the part nobody wants.
I'll tell you this, it's usually the thing that we struggle with that probably holds the solution, right?
The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek.
In your case, it's the inaction that would be so absolutely terrible for you, and so that's where you need to dive into.
Right.
In order to get there, it really requires self-awareness, some deep work for you to know your own faults, to know your own strengths, your own weaknesses, for you to be able to more objectively assess rather than just be in a state of constant reaction. You want to be able to have conscious action.
Yeah, I love that. But that's exactly it. You don't really want to ever stop progressing. We're not talking about, that, but you can't use some arbitrary, predetermined expectation to allow that to force you into doing something. I figured out the gods were telling me, stop. And so I decided to stop running and listening. And so instead of chaining myself to my desk and forcing myself to create something, that was going to suck, I just walked away. I went out into nature. I spent more time with my friends. I always spend time with my daughter, but I really made time to really be where everything was quiet. Thinking about what Eckhart Tolle says, talking about the isness, all of that stuff. Eventually I realized I used to use alcohol to numb myself, but I couldn't do that. And I could no longer ignore my soul's calling to come to that stillness. It wasn't comfortable. And like you said, that's where we, have some of these indicators. I talk about impatience a lot because that's the theme of this stage. It's magic flight, but it manifests inversely. Impatience is probably one of my biggest problems in every aspect of my life, but it manifests to all of us.
So let's just qualify this magic flight, right? It's basically a flight from the thing that would be sabotaging you individually. And in this case, for you, it manifests as impatience.
As my biggest problem. I think for everybody, impatience is a problem. But it might not be your chief problem.
Absolutely.
I know where you're going with this. There's going to be other problems that are going to be top on your radar. You can't just constantly think about, in this stage of the journey, this problem will manifest. Mm-hmm. No, you're in this with yourself. This is your journey for yourself, your life. Your dragons are going to look different than somebody else's dragons. I think it's basically where you were going with this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Yeah. See, this is why we're partners, because we vibe on this shit. It's taken me a while to learn that life is more than just the victories won or the horizons crossed. I had to learn and relearn and learn again the lesson that life is not about seeking out grand accomplishments that can earn us acclaim, but it's in finding the significance in the simple little pedestrian things in life and sharing that joy with as many people as we can. It was easy to sit in silence when you're comfortable and content, to find that like isness that Eckhart Tolle talks about, but it's significantly harder when you're depressed or you're suffering from anxiety or you have all these problems and these bills and this stacking up and that lobster brain telling you need to fuck, everything else that's coming on top of it. Past couple months have been a little trying for me, and I've been under a lot of pressure, and to my surprising credit, I've been doing fairly well. Not perfect, but I've been doing all right. My pride got gutted when I failed in some responsibilities to my friends, not to mention the financial shit hanging over my head. I had to miss appointments with clients, and we've missed sessions with the podcast, but I haven't strayed. I haven't lost my shit. And I'm saying this not to brag. I'm saying this because I would have, maybe even not that long ago. And it's because I've been writing about this process. A lot of what I talked about in my old channel when the hero's journey first came up a couple of years ago, I started vlogging on that on I think Monster Health and Fitness and More Than a Machine, and I talked about it a little bit, and then I did a couple vlogs on it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized, wow, this really does map to life, and there was more here, and I started diving into it, like we talked about in the apotheosis stage. Being so involved in this, really thinking about this, it's given me so much fuel, so much ammunition, so many tools to really handle in my own life. For us talking about the hero's journey, it's more than just, oh, this is really interesting, and look, it's not completely copyrighted. We could talk about this stuff. It's more the fact that this really has worked for me. I'm talking from experience. You're talking from experience. Having that become so real and so visceral, it's something I really can't put too fine a point on. I'll talk in circles about it because at some point it's just a thing you have to experience before you really know how it can actually manifest in your life and what it's going to look like and what it's going to feel like. This is one of those things you just have to immerse yourself and really just be there and say thank you every fucking agonizing step of the way.
Beautifully put, dude.
I was in the flow.
I could tell. There were points where I'm like, I want to say something, but I'm gonna let him keep going because he's rolling with it. He's rolling with it right now.
You can see it. There's a little glaze in my eye.
Right. It happens, right? It happens. It just it doesn't even feel like you're communicating it. It's just being communicated through you.
And, not to sound like insane, but it's more like I'm watching the words.
That's when you're in flow. Whether you're writing, whether you're speaking, you've tapped into something deep inside. And go back to what we were saying earlier. Like you want to be authentic. Well, just figure out who the hell you are and how the hell do you do that? Here are the practicals. Get quiet with yourself because we are so inundated with just external environmental sounds and input, and it's so unnecessary, because we don't give ourselves a chance to even for 10 minutes really think about and assess what do we actually care about? What in our lives is actually true? Or what do we just think is true because we've been told? Oh, I'm pursuing happiness because? Figure out what that means to you. And going back to what we were saying earlier, figuring out what it is that you are uniquely coming into this world with. Because believe it or not, if you can almost figure that out and start pursuing that path, like you, Matt, in pursuing the path, you continually uncover the very things that are going to keep pushing you on that path. And it's going to be both beautiful and ugly and difficult and challenging and incredible and amazing as well. When you immerse yourself, when you're in flow, because you've done the work, you've taken the time to really do the self-assessment and analysis and really try to peel back what's true and untrue and just show up the way you are, not because of what you're expected to be, because it's who you are. The moment you start figuring that out and then pursuing that path, in the pursuit, in the path itself, on that path, in doing the work, you are constantly changing because of the things that keep coming upon that path. The work you've done, the work you are doing is constantly informing you, constantly transforming you. That only keeps pushing you further. As woo as it sounds, there is no spiritual path for everyone, but whatever path you're on is your path. And that's just the thing that we need to all embrace, because if we can figure out what the next step is based on what we've been doing, based on the self-work we've been doing, based on the breakthroughs we've had internally inside ourselves, the next step always presents itself, and we continue to grow when we can continue to see that next step that we need to take. And you're saying that you need to be a little more patient, you need to bring it down, you need to quiet. More recently, I've come to realize that, me too, the work that I need to start doing, where do I need to start changing in order to keep moving forward? I need to actually do the reverse. Matt and I, when we talk in private, we realize we're almost polar opposites.
In weird ways.
Yeah.
We think a lot alike, but how those thoughts manifest, channel through us differently.
Even just our life situations and the environment and work, right? Like, I'm overworked.
Mm-hmm.
I'm spread way too thin. Like, you want the
I'm
work,
underworked.
like, you need the action. Like, my body, my mind, my spirit, they need to relax, right? They need that step away, that to be able to pull back for a moment and to actually maybe find time. And I realized just this more deeply over the weekend, more time for play and laughter. And I haven't given myself that. In life, we generally do tend towards the extremes, and we tend towards the extremes that feel most comfortable. I like to numb myself with busyness, right? And several other things. But that's where we realize, like, basically what it is, as I was pointing out to you earlier, is the thing that we don't want to engage in because we fear what it brings, or because of the difficulty that it requires of us. I mean, even me cutting out coffee, right? Like, that was the biggest fucking thing. I can't even tell you, like, the terror I felt, like, making that conscious decision.
And it's funny you use the word terror, like you equate it with fear. It's making those big changes are fucking terrifying. And if I'm going to be really visceral, Tom got visceral, I'm going to get visceral, because I can't let him out visceral me.
I don't know if I could ever out visceral.
No, I don't think you can. Well, see, the thing is, I was born without a shame gland, so I don't know if it's really noble or not. I mean, honestly, I have, like, when it comes to being with women, like, I have a fear of success, not a fear of failure. And I used to think that was a weird thing, but the more research I did, like, online and, like, talking to other people, turns out it's actually not all that uncommon for really highly motivated, direct, high action, high alpha people to have a fear of success with the opposite sex, you know, male and female. Because, you know, you don't necessarily want shit to get in your way. You don't want that level of vulnerability, because you've got to do things and measure things and stamp things and be the captain of industry. And it's like, now it's time to be vulnerable? You know, and nowadays everybody puts everything online. You have to be that authentic self. So, you know, you're gonna take cute little selfies on the beach, you know, with your
That's fucking authentic.
That's authentic, but it's like you don't want to show that side of yourself, and you also don't want to give up the time. You know.
Yeah, time's a big one.
Time's a big one, and this is where we've talked about it before in other podcasts. I talked about Deida, especially for guys, and this is.
I love that you brought.
I know,
brought him up because I was about to bring him up. I was about to bring him up.
Dude, again, telepathic. Yeah. The female represents nature, represents the isness. The male mind is the consciousness, is the doing mind. I'm talking about me, but I know a lot of other guys out there, and this is mainly to the guys, is that you want to get involved in doing, but a woman will help you be involved.
Just FYI, we're
being.
covering our asses here. I'm going to say it every fucking time we bring up Deida. He acknowledges, as do we, that both the feminine and the masculine exist in all people.
In all people.
And
in all people, in all beings, we're using them as generic blanket umbrella energetic terms. So
that being said,
right, he also wrote to a male audience, and that was the point, is that we are so caught up in doing, and a woman will help us become more present in being. But as we talked about before, like especially in context with Buddhism, is we can't rely on the external things. I can't rely on some woman to make me isness. I had to learn to do that myself. So some woman comes along and I won't fuck it up like I did my marriage. Ooh, now he just got really authentic.
Oh shit. But it's true, and this is my problem as well. You can absolutely not try this, because my entire life, as I said previously, right, it was built on a lack of self-worth, right? It required external validation because I couldn't do it for myself. This past year has been tremendous in me really working on that issue, on that problem, right? Like, that external validation, I can tell you honestly that it's nowhere near as strong or necessary as it once was.
But that's huge. That's not just you, that's like a lot of people, I think.
Absolutely. So often, like, the only reason we're pursuing what it is we're pursuing is because we need the acclaim of our parents or our lovers or society in general, or friends and family. That's the problem right there. Yeah. So that inhibits that potential for authenticity. You absolutely can't seek that from someone else. You need to have the sense of that self-worth, self-validation before you can ever even choose to engage with someone. And even then, your happiness is not dependent on that.
No, it can't be.
You just simply need to commit to your purpose.
And that person will be there with it.
And then you simply support one another.
Yeah, well, the law of hypergamy, women want to marry across and up. Men don't necessarily care about across and up. We can go with across or down. That's the natural flow state in life. Again, using this mostly as an illustration. Find a woman who sees what I'm building, says, oh, you want to build a personal development empire? I like that. I can get on board with that. And then support me in that. That would be fantastic. But it doesn't matter whatever it is. Why do you think these starving artists, musicians who could barely get a gig, why do they have these beautiful women attached to them? because they love that creative, authentic, experiential. It's really purgative in a lot of ways. It's like being at the edge of a volcano all the time. And it could be, really heady and horrible and toxic, but when there's a balance there, when both people flow together, that's that full life experience we're talking about. So where you are, Tom, and where I am, and where our audience is going to be, but when we consider these multiple dimensions, and when you have a certain amount of faith, there's some things you can do. Maybe I could get out and try to meet more people more, however the fuck that happens. I don't know what humans do. And like, just as much as like, I get a little dip in my clients. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I should go through my phone and try to find some clients that have kind of fallen away and dropped off and try to get them back in. Like, there's some things you can do, but in the end, people are going to say no. People are going to say yes. You can't be tied to the event. You have to be immersed in your own experience, and again, be grateful for every step of the way.
I just want you to consider the fact that you are walking this earth right now. The fucking chances of that happening, right?
They calculated it. It's minute.
It's insane. So to even be able to be given that opportunity, that chance, embrace it. Do something with it. Move forward. Constantly. The external will orient itself around the individual. When that individual is focused on showing up 110%, you have to do the work personally. And then whether it's the woman, the job, the career, all of the above, whatever the case is for you individually, that will align itself.
And it's 100% true. And all these guys that we've mentioned, Gary Vee, Tai Lopez, David Meltzer, Tony Robbins, Tim Ferriss, all of these people keep saying the same thing. That's one of the things I realized as I was getting myself clean and getting my life together, is I listened to all these people all at once. Every day I would listen to 3 or 4 different TED Talks or podcasts or whatever, and just realizing I keep coming up with a consistent theme, and I keep hearing the same thing from these people. So I started making notes on that, and really, presence and gratitude, these are like the biggest themes. And if you maintain that presence, if you maintain that gratitude for the experience, have appreciation for the ability to be present, then you'll get into that flow state, and then whether you have to move fast or slow, you're ready to go at that pace. And the magic flight stage won't even be that scary. You can have hell itself snapping at your heels, and you're just going to keep that Buddhist serene smile, like he had all the demons that ever were at him, and he just turned them all into flowers. You're going to have that exact same experience, that same calmness, and I can only tell you this from my experience. I couldn't say this to myself just a couple of years ago, or I could say it, but I couldn't feel it, and I've lived it. I'm still living it in certain respects. Still getting a lot of cancellations on my schedule, but the fact of the matter is, I know I'm going to get through it. And everybody else, whatever you're going through, you're going to get through it too. This isn't some bullshit fairy tale.
You've heard this before. Trust the process.
Love the process.
Absolutely. Don't feel bad that you don't feel good. Don't feel guilty about that.
That's good. He takes paragraphs of my bullshit and puts it on a post-it note. This is how we balance each other out, man.
We're worried for negativity. If you do what Matt is saying and just try to find more to be grateful for, you're training yourself and your brain to really seek those things out. The more you can do it, the more you can shift your mindset. So even when you're in the deep throes of whatever issues you may be facing, you can start to find silver linings. Yeah. You can start to find the lessons. You can start to reorient and change your mindset. You can also stop and more objectively assess without, again, getting so emotionally wrapped up and just immediately impulsively responding. And that kind of action is terrible. The more you do it, like as with anything, the better you get at it.
There's this pastor in my faith growing up. Certain members of the congregation would have times to speak before the whole congregation, do Bible readings and stuff. The pastor would give us like certain notes and things to help us improve in our speaking and everything. And he would always say, we're all in the same room for improvement. So fucking cheesy. And I actually can't believe I actually used that anecdote, but Tom's right. It's my t-shirt, damn it. I think we got the point.
I hope so.
It's all about flow.
It's all about flow. It's all about you being you.
We're grateful to James Morano for being such an awesome editor. We're grateful to the Phi Center for being such a wonderful place and sponsoring us.
I'm super grateful to Matt for being who he is and for showing up and for putting the time and the work in and creating all of this. Hero's Breath wouldn't be here without him. I'm grateful to be able to be on this journey with you and for all of us to just keep bouncing this shit back and forth. And I know with every conversation you and I have both also just ideas are popping and going off, and we're both growing from the process because we chose to do this, because this is where we're most authentic.
appreciate the flattery. Now I have to pay it back. This would just be me yammering without somebody else, and this is, I think, part of the reason my vlogs weren't as great as they could have been, is because I didn't have anybody to feed off of and give it that depth and give it that counterpoint. So I'm extremely grateful that you wanted to do this with me, and for all the scheduling conflicts we've had and all the bullshit. You know, you always talk about showing up. Sometimes I feel like I half-ass this, and you just put in this like extra edge to the whole thing, and you keep it simple, and you keep me from going off the worst fucking tangents imaginable, but making it live. Thank you to you too, and thank you to all of you out there listening or watching. I got a very nice message on Instagram last night, actually. Somebody saw my videos on TikTok and saw, you know, stuff on Instagram and found some inspiration. We were talking a little bit back and forth, so I got one.
7 billion to go.
So we hope that we've been able to add more to your journey. That's our goal here, and whatever your goals are, we want to hear about it. Make sure you reach out to Tom on Instagram, me on Instagram, or TikTok, or Twitter, at Hero's Breath. It's always the same. What's your IG handle?
It's Tom_Jasinski, JASINSKI_.
Yeah, he's Polish if you couldn't tell. Alright, that's enough of this bullshit. I want to thank you again for tuning in. This is Matt.
And Tom.
Signing off and reminding you that you are still the hero. Good night, everybody.
Good night.